Hey there folks, it's Manitombs time. In the last episode we spoke a bit about the hunter rotation, quote-unquote, in the Burning Crusade and how haste impacts how we perform our rotation. We'll see a little more refinement in this one, but mostly we'll be experimenting with CC today. I've got some macros and serve hunter mechanics to figure out, so let's get into this. Enjoy! So here we are on the very first poll in the Manitombs, and something I've noticed about the first polls in TBC dungeons, they always seem to be kind of tricky. You know, there's probably a patrol walking around, and on heroics difficulty at least, the patrols are pretty tough to handle. But on normal they're okay, and there's certainly not a problem with the amount of CC we're dishing out right now. The Wyvern Sting in the back and the Freezing Trap up front are about to come off cooldown at the same time. So we'll focus on the Wyvern Stung target. Well, we could Scattershot the one on the left since we do have Scattershot now, but a bad multi unleashes the final trap and I use my scatter on that to hopefully let the tank pick that one up. Now with something on me, I can't exactly focus my DPS on it, but what I can do is whatever shots I can't fire on the one on me, I can always fire on the one on the tank until something changes like that, like the tank taking it back. But more often than not, that could result in some silly dance of aggro, and where we just have targets swapping around constantly because of the split damage everywhere. Ideally, we want to focus on one target, but if that cannot be helped, then there's always target swapping to make sure that we keep our stuff on cooldown. I'm definitely feeling a lot more confident about our rotation and such thus far. I am level 65 as of this Manitombs run, so we do not have kill command yet, but we will see it very soon. The next episode, probably. And I know the chat's blocked, I'll block it off, or unblock it in a second. I was just having a personal conversation with some friends in here for a minute, so give me a minute and I'll fix that. Anyway, man, there is a lot to do at 70. I have been so busy just trying to run some heroics, get attuned for everything. My guild wants me for this or that, and as it turns out we don't really have an alchemist yet, so I'm figuring out how to level my mage solo in the slave pens. And I could have done that on the hunter too, because well, as Chrissy has said in the Ravager Den, and as Zero G has demonstrated yet again with his amazing hunter skill and ingenuity, solo farming the slave pens on a hunter is entirely possible. But I do like the mage toolkit for AoE farming better, but I'm not very good at the mage understanding of how things work, so I've kind of come up with my own little terrain exploit in there. I mean, there are some guides out there that are like, hey, blink to the side of these mobs and Frost Nova and then walk past them, and I'm just like, nope, I'm gonna jump up on this ledge and watch them all go that way, far away from me, so that I can restart my blizzards from a far distance. So it's the hunter understanding of the mage toolkit. Terrain exploitation fixes everything. But yeah, despite all that, and despite the fourth being in very close proximity to when I finish this episode, and by the way, I hope you all have had a fantastic 4th of July, a happy Independence Day to my fellow American friends. I was still able to get this episode out, because there's simply not enough time in the day to do so much grinding and also get all these episodes out. I'm just going to pull this patrol while it's here, because it's in a convenient spot, and it's about to be in an inconvenient spot, rather. And I'll scatter that one there. Where was I? Well, anyway, I hope you all have had a great 4th, and I'm happy to get another episode out. And I'm happy you're here with me, because I'm having a blast here on official TBC. I mean, it's got its problems, but I love it all the same. Much like America, I prefer to celebrate all the good that it brings. I'm going to lay down a freezing trap preemptively before the next pack is pulled, and I'm going to step away from that trap with this mob so that I can actually use that trap. I fired off a Wyvern Sting, and I'm going to try to get something else in the trap here. But due to leeway, batching, whatever you want to call it, one of the mobs runs right over it, and the other caster refuses to go into the trap. So we're just dealing with 2 mobs here. My personal goal for this run is to make sure that things are as under control as possible. This thing is not going to stay CC'd for long, but I get it trapped for just a second so I can step away. Once Daze falls off, the Wyvern breaks it out of the trap, the tick from Wyvern Sting's secondary damage over time component, and now everything is taken care of and we can go on to the first boss, who is actually kind of a tricky fight. He's got Spell Reflect and all this stuff, and I'm trying something weird here. As you may recall, the way the taunt works is the tank gets our threat level and then has to add his own on top of that. So my idea there was to open up full hog on the boss, let the tank taunt it off me, and then feign death so that he has a lot of threat, but that didn't quite work out because it ran all over the place, and now I gotta run back into melee range. He obviously has some knockback, and he also has some spell reflection damage, or damage reflection in general, but I haven't really noticed anything on a hunter. It seems the melee are scared of him, but I don't know why I can melee weave if that's the case. Maybe it's just the hunter filter of no hex. I do not see any hex to give. I still have Aspect of the Monkey up at the moment, which is, I should have swapped back to Hawk a little while ago, but nonetheless he goes down. And it's another one of those mistakes that we are meant to learn from. We've had Aspect of the Viper since the Slave Pens, but I do keep it up a tad too often. It's easy to forget about it. But Aspect of the Hawk, and just as importantly, Quick Shots, are very, very powerful, and we should keep them up as much as possible. So we're still figuring out the damage stuff, but we are getting better at the CC, as you've seen in the first part of this episode, and as you'll see going forward. And there's a 4-pack up ahead to test a little bit more on. Now, you may have noticed that I laid a trap over to the left here, and that's the first trap in a double trap combo, or at least it's the idea. I marked the skull for the tank to pull out, but the trap placement on the first trap was not conducive to doing this 4-pack pull with the double trap and the Wyvern Sting. You see, that first trap has to be tripped first. Otherwise, you can't lay another one or it will overwrite the first trap. The first trap will despawn, and then you only have one trap. So ideally, we lay it as close to the enemy as possible and drag the first enemy into it. The enemy that is meant to trip the first trap, because it will come ahead of the other ones, due to how the pulling behavior works. Nevertheless, we are making our way through this pack in a very scuffed fashion. There's a heal going on, but I've got my scatter shot up, our tank has a bash and is ready to use it, and we will not let any casket off if we can help it. So by staggering our traps, by putting one as close to the enemy as possible, or as close to the next thing that needs to be pulled, so that it's tripped quite soon. It was a little kiting shenanigans there, exploiting the paving to make sure that the back one got into the trap. By doing what I just said, we put a shorter delay on the furthest trap, and we make sure that the last target to be CC'd, it comes up at the latest. So the Wyvern Sting and the first trap are bound to be pretty close in that scenario. But those can be broken at any time, and they trivialize a huge pull, which is the most important part, at least in a heroic. Of course, it's just helpful in normals, and if you must, you can always use Scattershot or Wyvern Sting as interrupts instead of actual CC. That can be just as useful, just as helpful to your group if your group only desires interrupts. Like say if you've got a really good paladin tank or just a really good tank in general. Those paladin tanks, they're not too friendly towards soft CC like ours. They sure are fun though. I'm amazed by the effectiveness of paladin tanks in dungeons in the Burning Crusade. Although some healers don't really seem to like them, since they tend to pull everything and also presumably they take a lot of damage from that. Some paladin tanks I've seen can be ridiculously beefy, but there are some that seem really squishy to me. Maybe it's a difference of experience or gear, but who knows. Anyway, we've still got Cinders and Tardigrade, the tank healer couple from RLO. We've also got Bagel, another shaman, and we've got DJ Mustard, who is a warlock. So we'll be continuing to see a nice, smooth chain pull of one mob at a time, if I can help it, right up until the end of the dungeon. And there was another aim shot precast there. We'll see a couple more of those, but I'm not doing it quite as often anymore. It's still kind of a habit. Right here we've placed a freezing trap preemptively, and I've managed to drag this Void Terror around it, so we can save it for the next pack that we're about to pull. Just as soon as this thing's dead, of course. We've been Psy Screamed, but the thing's already at half HP. I'm just going to fire a couple more shots and then turn around and look to pull something. That patrol's too easy. Let's get this thing over here. I've got the sorcerer here, who's going to be the first target in the trap. That's gone off successfully. I placed another freezing trap. I'm going to get the wyvern sting off on this one, just to leave it here for our friends, and... oh, this thing's still alive. Whoops! Okay, we should definitely help our friends finish off the stuff that needs finishing first. But besides that, our CC has set this up perfectly for us to just chain pull the rest of the mobs one by one. Turn a 3-pack pull into 1. Now, we could have shot that far target a little bit sooner and had it come over here sooner and therefore die sooner. But we've got scatter shot to fill in the gap here. I've scattered that scavenger over there, and just in time for his friend to go down too. You see what I mean when I said this is a fun spec? I mean, sure, it seems like more of a PvP thing, but I've got PvE talents, like, I don't have improved wing clip or any of that other fun stuff like that, no entrapment, but I took these just for fun, you know, just to CC things. And I am having a blast with my Dragonhawk meme pet, who is on stay in the back, because even though in TBC, the aggro radius for pets is exactly the same as our aggro radius, even if the pulling behavior differs somewhat, I'm still in the habit of leaving the pet far away so that I can send it into battle when it's time, and really it's not unreasonable to just keep it at your side all the time. It's a habit to leave it on stay somewhere safe, somewhere out of the way. Because in vanilla, you know, a low-level pet, maybe with some weird paving shenanigans, could result in an ass pull. But in TBC it's a bit different. I had some shenanigans with the pulling there, with the Los over this gigantic bone pile, but all was well. We got the wyvern sting off in the end, and turned yet another pack of 3 mobs into a 1-at-a-time trickle. And by the way, given that target is a priest, it would be okay to use an aim shot precast on this thing, because again, we could use aim shot just for the anti-healing behavior it has in TBC on mobs and dungeons, but due to the way that it resets stuff, due to the way it ruins our auto shot and auto attack cooldowns, it's highly imprudent otherwise. And also, of course, as one of the main shots in a misdirect. But that's some more stuff for later. We'll fire off the multi on the very tail end there, just to make sure that we break that trap with a little bit of damage on the dying mob, although I don't think it hit the dying mob. It at least broke the trap at a good time. And that only leaves the priest that I froze behind us here in this trap. And this time we did aim shot it, but it doesn't really matter since it didn't heal. The next hallway has some infamous enemies in the mana tombs, these Darkcasters with their terrible mana burn. There was a bit of a wyvern macro fail. I thought I had the mouse over component installed, but I completely forgot that I removed it because I couldn't find a way to make the triangle also be placed automatically on the mouse over target. So if I moused over something and had something else targeted, it would fire off the wyvern sting on the alternative target, but put the triangle on my target. And I suppose for my failure, Bagel loses his life here. Rest in peace, Bagel, you will be sorely missed. At least until Cinders picks you up off the ground. So anyway, I decided eventually, screw the mark, I'm just going to keep my wyvern sting macro classic, with a mouse over override function and auto targeting. That way there's no confusion with the marks and whatnot, and indeed I can mark something ahead of time so that my group knows not to touch it. I'm just going to go ahead and fix that wyvern sting macro right now. Best by copying the function from another macro, like my scattershot macro. In the meantime, I'm just auto-shooting, and I did leave a frost trap down to help keep that mob in one place in case it happens to go wandering somewhere. And there we go. This macro is fixed up, so let's continue on. You know, sometimes you write macros ahead of time thinking where exactly it will be useful, you know, how exactly it will be applied. But there's no better solution for developing macros than field tests, seeing the practical application in action. Our scattershot was on cooldown, so I did not think that I had anything to interrupt that mana burn, but I realize here, this is the moment that I realize, hey, I've got Wyvern Sting off cooldown, and it can be used in combat, so I could use this to interrupt. So realizing that, we're going to adapt to this next enemy. We'll see what happens, we'll see if he starts casting it, there it is, so I stop casting, fire off that Wyvern Sting, and they are not getting one of these off again. For this next one, I've gone up and dropped a trap right at their feet, pretty much. I've decided that this one mob is a-okay for trapping on this particular pack, so we'll simply focus on the Darkcaster, who now has an aim shot debuff on him, which should prevent any healing, at least for a little while. Unfortunately, we appear to be lagging at the moment, so I'm not able to really help with this guy, but our group mates seem a-okay and take him down without incident, leaving only the priest. I've positioned myself so I can fire upon the next target as soon as possible, and here he comes. I'm still getting used to the amount of shots that we fire out. You know, stopping to auto-shot is sometimes a little wonky, and I accidentally clip it for no reason. Also, ding 66. This is the level where we get kill command, but we will not see it until the next episode, because we need to leave the dungeon in order to train it at the trainer. Or learn it at the trainer, you know what I mean. This here is another Darkcaster Priest combo, but the Darkcaster did have aim shot on it, but it does not anymore. There's the mana burn, and my scatter shot was late due to the global cooldown. So you see, it's really worth saving the GCD just to interrupt that thing if possible, because my goodness is it impactful. The priest is easier to deal with. Pop his bubble shield with an arcane shot before moving on to the next pack, which is more of these here mana leeches, which tend to explode on death and cast a mana burn and a fairy fire. They're made very, very easy with some careful trap placement and Wyvern Sting on the one in the back. And by the way, if you've noticed, I have been dropping some freezing traps on Darkcasters during pulls. And the reason for that is if one happens to start casting a mana burn, it could potentially interrupt one. Due to the trap delay, there's no way to drop it during the cast, but I have seen it interrupt a mana burn here or there. It's pretty rare, but it can happen. It sure feels good when it does, because it's blind luck, but it's cool luck, you know what I mean? This time, our GCD is up to interrupt that mana burn, and this thing goes down without incident, which again leaves only the priest I've left trapped in the back here. It's too bad we don't have a dispel for this Shadow Word Pain, because it seems to hurt quite a lot. It is very Shadow Word painful. And this combination is not getting old anytime soon, because there's another Darkcaster Priest combo right in front of us. We'll be on to some different trash very soon, but in the meantime, this is all we've got to deal with. By the way, did you notice what happened there? I precast on the Darkcaster, hoping to concussive it and keep it out of the freezing trap, so it would suffer some damage before it got to us, and remained the main target, so it's easier to deal with. But concussive shot was not enough to keep it out of my freezing trap, and therefore the priest was our main target. It seems that concussive shot simply does not cut it, so a bit of kiting and paving anticipation is required, or perhaps a scatter shot before it gets into the trap, but that is a scatter shot we could otherwise spend on interrupting a mana burn or something of the sort. So maybe in a formation where two mobs are in a row and we pull the back one, maybe the back one does not hit the trap, and a concussive shot might be enough in that case. But when we hit the front one, it just gets too far ahead. Like you see here, it's stacked up with the other one now, and we'll see what we can do. The one that we intended was indeed trapped, and we were able to save scatter for that interrupt right there, leaving only this one in the freezing trap, which I will freezing trap again, for no reason whatsoever, because it's not free yet. It's not free to the first one, so it interrupts absolutely nothing. I threw out a Wyvern Sting to attempt to interrupt that mana burn, but our druid had it. We're at the next boss, so it's time for another burst cycle, which hopefully is successful. I've popped off the Jamgabar and the Rapid Fire, only because my badge of the Swarm Guard is on cooldown, and this boss is not exactly weave friendly due to the Earthquake mechanic, but we'll see what we can do. Right here, I'm attempting to weave during the haste bit of the rotation, and I'm still getting used to the range and letting it go off. And I've got to feign death during the haste too, or some of it, which is not really great because it does delay our auto attacks, just like aim shot does. Now, hypothetically, it should be possible to get some melee attacks off during a very high haste rotation, but due to the way that Raptor Strike can sometimes be delayed, or otherwise our auto attacks can sometimes be delayed on official Classic, or Classic TBC rather, it's terribly unreliable and actually inadvisable, but I still have to test this to know for sure. Despite that, weaving is quite possible and quite fun still during a normal rotation. And during that boss fight, I happened to place a trap in a convenient spot, so we only get 2 targets. But despite marking the skull on that one. I guess I did it a bit late, but we had a dot on the mob that came to us. I just wanted to keep the intended kill target out of my second trap, but I suppose I could have used a Wyvern Sting instead, and that would have kept that one there, and we could have just killed the Stalker, the melee mob, first. The other Stalker is almost out of the freezing trap, so I break it early. I'm going to fire off the multi-shot when it'll hit them both. That works out, so we'll daze our way past this one, cheat it to get a bit more speed, and we'll lay down yet another trap for the mana worms, which are next on our to-kill list. Because surely that Stalker behind me is dead by now, right? I fired out a Wyvern Sting on one of the worms, and despite my efforts, oh, this thing is still alive, and has a lot of HP too, weird. Anyway, despite my best efforts, the frontal mana leech was the one that got trapped. The Wyvern Stung one is coming up next. It's casting a mana burn, but it was interrupted by our druid's feral charge. The last one by itself just gets yeeted down very easily. And although we'll be seeing some new enemies in these next trash packs, the Darkcasters are not one of them. We've seen them in the last hallway, and they are still here in this hallway. And this time I decided to use my scattershot to make sure that it did not trip the freezing trap. This way it gets to us at like 70%, and I relied on my friends there to interrupt the mana burn, which they did, as I'd hoped. Now it's just the freezing trap target, which I'm just going to break out. It's casting on me, but that's an easy interrupt, and it's not really a threat anyway if it's not interrupted. These little mana wraith things certainly are a threat though. They seem to do a lot of AoE damage. They do die quickly. Besides the side packs, there are also some patrols in these next rooms, and there's a really high density of enemies here. This time, Concussive Shot was effective at keeping that enemy out of my freezing trap, but there was a bit of a paving derp there, which I suppose had something to do with it. He twitched a moment to the right, and I don't think I can reliably force that to happen, but I certainly tried by jumping around a bunch there. So now it's just the other Stalker. Tardigrade can taunt this off me, and I'm going to go see what else we've got to deal with. It seems there are two casters on the side here, and I'll place a freezing trap before I mana up. This leaves the trap off cooldown in case I want to use it to attempt to interrupt something. Again, I had to use Scattershot to keep the skull target out of the trap. This one is out of my reach, so I simply los it instead of trying to interrupt it with Wyvern Sting. A bash did go out, and that lasted us until it died. And now we can all gang up on the sorcerer, who is again by himself. That's what we do with this dungeon. We make everyone lonely. We kill all their friends and then we kill them. That's just how it goes. Again, with the incredibly high mob density in this area, and there is a Nexus Terror followed by 2 packs just in that small hallway leading into the next room. It's kind of absurd, isn't it? But hey, more opportunities to have fun and kill stuff. I've feigned this thing off, whatever aggro that I happen to have on it. I'm going to place a freezing trap preemptively here. I'll smack this spider before it causes any trouble, because those critters, man, they can trip your traps sometimes. Or certain critters can, the ones that are not, strictly speaking, critters. This next pull is 3 melee mobs, which could be an issue for our tank friend. You know, they can hit pretty hard. We've gotten that one in the trap. Again, it's not the ideal target because it's the one that I had the mark on. I'm going to keep my eyes on the Wyvern Stung one, which is free now. I'm going to try to get it over here. It is stuck in a freezing trap for just a moment, and every bit helps, I suppose, because these things gouge, and I've been gouged, and I'm glad that I ate that instead of Tardigrade, because if they gouge the tank, they go on somebody else, and we are free to dish out a flurry of attacks on the next Stalker. We've got a Quick Shots proc, and that could only happen with Aspect of the Hawk up. That's why we keep Aspect of the Viper only for drinking and really low mana situations. But before we go get the next pack, there is a shiny that I spot behind us. And now we go ahead and pull this Nexus Terror. I guess my friends cleared out the pack in the doorway there, or in the tiny corridor rather. But no, actually they were there the entire time, and for some reason they did not load in on my screen, even though the Nexus Terror did load in. So I actually wound up pulling the Nexus Terror straight through these enemies, and my group mates were like, hey, why'd you do that? Afterwards, and I thought it was like a patrol or something I didn't even see, but looking back at the footage, you know, you spot this weird stuff going on, and goodness gracious, Blizzard, what's going on here? What's up with your Occlusion culling? It needs some work, it needs some fixing. We saw some great use of Occlusion culling in Key to Freedom, Amnesia, But I guess this is more a technical issue and less a design issue, if you know what I mean. Anyway, no harm, no foul. Only 2 people died, and that is hardly an issue when we have killed so many of them, right? See, you gotta think of the positives, you know, we have a larger kill count, and therefore we're still winning. And I'm still up to help finish things off, and still up to try to help res our friends here, which works. And maybe helps save Cinders some time and mana before we continue on to the next room, where instead of 2 mob packs on the sides, there are 3 mob packs on the sides. See, it's different now. But no different in the sense that we could still turn the 3 mob packs into 1 mob packs, little trickle of mobs, coming our way to hit our tank like a wet pool noodle, before kindly gifting us some experience points. Now, right, there was a curious mouse over multi-shot. I intended to use the mouse over multi to chain from the Spellbinder to the one that we were killing, and away from my trap target in the back. However, it chained instead to the Wraith that just spawned, did not chain to the one that we were killing, and also was not close enough to the trap anyway to break that. So if we'd fired on the main target, that would have been fine. But knowing how that works, we can improve upon it, and also knowing when to feign death and when to go ahead and pull stuff, there are a lot of patrols. My Wyvern Sting is not up, but I can double trap this stuff. Our tank does break the trap though by hitting the squared target. But that's okay, we'll just smack him and dance away from the melee range as best we can, and hopefully our tank can taunt it off us soon. There it is off us, allowing us to return to range and chain multi into the melee if we really want to fire off the shots so close to the enemy. Isn't the lack of a dead zone so fun? I'm having so much fun with this this weave heavy style, and also with the scatter wyvern combo, because look at that, we just interrupted an immolate which cannot be dispelled. Didn't get the second one, but that's okay. We can save the wyvern sting for something else, like the next pack we have to kill. That comes, of course, after yet another Nexus Terror, which is one of the last ones in our way, but one of the last ones being, there are like, let me see, there's one up the stairs, there are 2 in the final room, so there are 4 more of these left, counting this one here. And as long as we pump hard, like we're meant to do in TBC, because we are the DPS class in TBC, or one of the DPS classes, we'll get through them in a timely fashion. So this next 4 mob pull is a good demonstration of CC failure and how it can affect our chain pulling. Here I accidentally broke my first trap with an auto shot, but my friends do not break the other CC. Nevertheless, we are stuck with 2 mobs at once at any given time, rather than the trickle of 1 mob at a time. And 2 mobs means more chaos, more shenanigans. So that was entirely avoidable, and that was entirely my fault. But you know, maybe we don't wind up with 2 mobs at any given time, because these 2 are just about dead, and the trap is not yet broken. So we were left with the 1 mob at the end, but the start of the pull was more hectic, and therefore more harsh on Cinder's mana. So the CC pulls can be pretty impactful, but they also need to be executed carefully. Take a bit of practice. But of course, that's exactly why I'm leveling the way that I am, as survival as opposed to beast mastery. Because I am my guild survival hunter, and I want to learn the ins and outs of my spec and how the talents available to me behave before I hit 70. And the experience has paid off so far in heroics and such. I've been very useful with the crowd control or the interrupt where that's applicable. Another thing I've gotten better at doing is popping my burst cooldowns willy-nilly, because as tempting as it is to always save it for the boss fights, often the trash packs are the most pressing obstacle in our way. They're the majority of the obstacles. So using our burst cooldowns like Jump Gabar, Badge of the Swarm Guard, Rapid Fire, as often as possible helps where it's most needed. Quickly clearing through all the trash in our way, as much as it can be helped, as much as we can help it. This here's the second to last Void Terror that we have to deal with in this instance, at least until the next run, of course. Now, a bit of a mistake here was dropping that Frost Trap so soon, because what I want to do is I want to set up a trap preemptively for the double trap on this 4-pack over here on the side. But perhaps a better idea at this juncture, because my trap is on cooldown, would be to simply pull the 3 on the right first. But Cinders needed to drink anyway, so I was able to get it set up. I've got the first freezing trap out, I've got the Wyvern Sting up, and I'm dropping the freezing trap here. Both of these guys are on our friends, but I'm dragging this guy over here. However, our Warlock multi-dotted a bit too soon, which is not good because the Wyvern Sting is up by now, and both of these Spellbinders summon their Wraiths. So this is snowballing into something that we probably can't handle quite as easily. We could probably still handle this, but it's going to be kind of scary. Oh, was that a Death Coil? That was a Death Coil, I think. And we've got the other pack. So, well, there are a couple of low targets in here. I'm just going to finish off what I can, I guess. I've dropped a Frost Trap to try to keep them under control a bit better, but there's no saving this at this point. So I'm just going to nope out of this one. That was not my fault. I made sure to let everyone know what I was doing. And I've been Blast Wave. We're slowed. Cheetah can rectify some of that. And our Feign Death is on cooldown, so we'll Feign Death right here. Thanks to Unks of Reincarnation, we recovered from that very quickly. And now we're going to pull these 3 pesky additions on the right before anything else. And folks are still not quite careful enough about the crowd control. But I suppose that's okay because we only have 2 targets and this one is already about dead. I've also got my Badge of the Swarm Guard back up, so we can punch through whatever armor these cloth-wrapped space ghosts happen to have on them. It's strange to think that they have any armor at all, with how they all seem to be covered in cloth. But anyway, the space ghosts are our enemies, and the space goats are our friends. This is the last one besides the boss that we gotta kill, so we'll finish it. And move on to the final Nexus Terror. Now, him being here would enable us to drop a Frost Trap in a convenient place, to set up for a double Frost Trap on those Mana Leech pulls, but this one was tripped very soon, and it's probably going to expire before we ever pull the Mana Leeches. That's okay, but it does make things a bit tougher since the Mana Leeches are coming in packs of 5 this time around. Not quite the packs of 3 that we were dealing with earlier. And their mana burn and fairy fire shenanigans do add up. Hopefully my Jam Gabar can even the odds. I've got a Frost Trap down there in the pit, which they start to trip. We'll see what we can do to take them down from range, and Tardy is standing by to attempt to interrupt something with his Feral Charge. There's a mana burn, he interrupts it, a very good interrupt and out of there like he did. We'll circle back around. And that leaves only the final trash pack on the left side. At least the final trash pack for this particular run of the Mana Tombs, because I do have one bonus footage to show at the end of this. One bit of bonus footage where we do a nice 4-pack pull very solidly with good double trap Wyvern shenanigans. Or no shenanigans. No shenanigans allowed. No nothing. Nothing but a smooth chain pull. Nothing but a nice pack dissection. For now though, the final boss, he has a few ads which turn into other ads if given the time to wind up. Apparently these beacons are ethereals but without their clothes on or something. I don't know, maybe they just teleport to the location of the beacons, but considering the substance of ethereals, whatever it is that makes them up, they seem to be energy beings, so those beacons could very well be naked ethereals. And the boss himself is a caster. He just fires off some spells in rapid succession. But anyway, since this is the final boss, I ought to say my farewells before we close out this one. Well, first I want to thank y'all for being here, and I want to also thank those of y'all who've hit me up recently in game or in private with some very kind comments. I was very happy to hear how some of y'all are liking the new series, and you know who you are, but I just wanted to say that. Your words are deeply inspiring and highly motivational, and I'm truly grateful. I love making episodes and such as a hobby. It's really fun, but it's also kind of tiresome, especially while I'm in the middle of doing level 70 grinding things and other stuff, and it's tough to make time. But it fills me with warmth and joy to hear that, and I always come back even more happily every time as a result, so thank you, truly. This is that 4-pack pull, by the way, the one clip of bonus footage I wanted to include. As you can see, things are a lot smoother here. Anyway, the next run we'll be looking at is Old Hillsbrad in the Caverns of Time. I had to run that a few times on the way up, so I've got a good run or two to look at. And here's a little tip for ya. I've been linking unlisted episodes a day or two ahead of time in the Ravager Den Discord server, linked in the description. If you're in the old one, drop by the new one. I had to make a new one for reasons. Reasons I explained in the Naxxramas episode if you're curious, and I'm very active there between episodes. So, that'll be all for now, folks. I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye!